They say you can tell everything you need to know about a person by how they treat you when you're vulnerable. I wish I had learned that lesson sooner. My name's Noah. I'm 28, and for most of my 20s, I really thought I had life figured out. I had a steady job as a UX designer at a mid-sized tech firm. I paid my bills on time. I was rebuilding my confidence after some rough teenage years, and I had a fiancée who I genuinely believed loved me. Her name was Claire. At first, Claire felt like the reward I didn't know I'd been working for. She was sharp, quick-witted, stunning in that effortless, I woke up like this kind of way. She walked into rooms, and people noticed. And when she picked me out of a crowd at a networking event 3 years ago, I honestly couldn't believe it. Claire had this magnetism about her, and being with her felt like being on a constant audition, one I was grateful to be part of, but where I never quite felt like I'd landed the role. She teased, and I laughed. She rolled her eyes, and I smiled. She made jokes at my expense in front of her friends, and I brushed them off, telling myself that's just her way of being funny, edgy, charming. I kept telling myself I was lucky, because guys like me, awkward, artsy teenagers who once wrote bad poetry in spiral-bound notebooks and spent high school ducking social events, don't usually end up with women like Claire. So I tried harder. I said yes to the events she wanted to go to. I dressed the way she wanted. I even let her choose the new couch when we moved in together, even though I hated how stiff it was. It was little things at first, things you don't think will matter. But looking back, the signs were everywhere. She always had this way of testing people. She liked poking at the edges of your confidence to see how much you'd been before you broke. She'd say things like, "It's not personal, babe, it's just a joke," when she'd roast me in front of her coworkers. Or, "Relax, I'm just keeping you humble," after she'd post side-by-side photos of my glow-up with the caption, "Hard to believe this is the same guy." I would laugh with everyone else, even though something always twisted in my gut. Still, I loved her, or I thought I did. I was convinced that every couple had weird dynamics, that her teasing was just how she showed affection. And so I went along with it, believing that being the butt of a few jokes was a small price to pay for having someone like her on my arm. Maybe that was my mistake, thinking I had to earn my place, that I had to be grateful. Then came game night. The moment everything shifted. Claire loved hosting. She thrived in social settings. She'd spent the week planning it, picking the snacks, curating a playlist, choosing which games to play. She even sent out invites that were a little over the top, but that was just Claire. She liked to control the room. She liked when people were watching her. That night, our apartment was filled with 10 or so people, her friends, mostly. A few couples, her brother Jack and his girlfriend, and one of my coworkers, Adam, who I'd invited just so I wouldn't be completely alone. We were playing some variation of Charades meets Truth or Dare, where if you passed on a challenge, the group could dare you to do something else. Mostly harmless fun, embarrassing childhood stories, karaoke, stuff like that. It was Jack who jokingly said, "Claire, I dare you to read one of Noah's love letters." Bet those were Shakespearean masterpieces. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, nervously. I expected her to wave it off or deflect. Instead, she got that sparkle in her eye, the one that meant she was about to put on a show. "Oh," she grinned. "You mean his teenage poetry stash? Because I definitely still have those." She got up and walked to our bedroom, and my stomach dropped. I should have stopped her. I should have stood up, said, "Hey, no, that's private." But I didn't, because I was still stuck in that mode of trying to seem like the cool, easygoing guy. The kind of guy who can take a joke. The kind of guy she wouldn't be embarrassed to bring around her friends. When she came back, she held a wrinkled, red notebook I hadn't seen in years. My old poetry journal from high school. I blinked. "Wait, why do you even have that?" I asked. She shrugged, flipping through it like it was a menu. "I found it when we were moving in together. Thought it was hilarious." Everyone was already giggling in anticipation. I wanted to melt into the floor. "Come on, Claire," I said, voice low. "That's kind of personal." "Oh, relax, it's cute," she waved me off. "Listen to this." Her eyes are stars, her laugh a symphony of springtime. "Oh my God, this is gold." Laughter erupted around the room. My hands felt clammy. I forced a smile. I kept telling myself it was fine, that they were just words from a teenager, that this didn't matter. She kept going, putting on a voice like she was doing dramatic theater. "Every time she looks at me, I forget how to breathe. I think that's what love is supposed to feel like. Dangerous, dizzying, like falling forever. She doubled over laughing. Jack clapped. Someone fake swooned. I looked at Adam, my coworker, who gave me an awkward, pitying smile. I felt exposed. Not just embarrassed, but gutted. She wasn't just reading the words. I could have lived with that. She was mocking them. Mocking me. The version of me who dared to feel something real, even if he didn't know how to say it eloquently. Then came the line that broke something in me. She closed the notebook and said, "Honestly, he used to be so pathetic. Good thing I fixed him." Jack howled. "You were doing the Lord's work." That's when everything went still for me. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt hollow, like someone had opened a window inside my chest and let all the warmth out. I looked around the room and realized I didn't know who I was anymore in this version of my life. I'd become the punchline in my own story, and she was the one delivering it. So I stood up, smiled, walked over to Claire, kissed her on the cheek, and said, "You really killed tonight." She beamed, proud of herself, not even catching the shift in my tone. Then I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I just left. I didn't even take my coat. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove around for hours with no destination. Just me, my thoughts, and the sound of the blinker ticking uselessly as I sat at empty intersections, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I remember pulling into a gas station sometime after midnight, buying a pack of gum and a bottle of water, and sitting in the parking lot staring out the windshield while the world blurred in front of me. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt stupid. Stupid for letting it get that far. Stupid for mistaking humiliation for love. The next morning, I checked into a hotel and turned my phone off. I needed air. Distance. Silence. I needed to remember what my voice sounded like when it wasn't trying to impress or apologize or defuse someone else's bad behavior. That first week away from Claire was the quietest week of my adult life. It was also the first time I truly started hearing myself. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 12 missed calls, 9 voicemails, and 37 unread messages from Claire. They started lighthearted. "Babe, come home. Everyone's asking where you went." Then they got a little more confused. "Seriously? Are you okay? Call me." Then guilt trippy. "I was just joking. You're being super dramatic." And finally, bitter. "You're really just going to ghost me after one little joke? Grow up." That was the message I didn't reply to, or any after it. A few days later, I went back to the apartment while she was at work and packed up everything that was mine. I didn't take the couch she picked out, or the decor she insisted made us look like a power couple. I left the framed photos, "The home is where the Wi-Fi connects" automatically sign, and the color-coded mugs. I only took my books, my clothes, a few kitchen tools, and that old red notebook, my teenage poetry journal. Not because I was proud of it, but because it belonged to me, and she never should have touched it. I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom condo in a quieter part of town. Nothing fancy, but it had big windows and sunlight and, most importantly, peace. I kept the walls bare at first. It felt like breathing again. Claire didn't take it well. Over the following weeks, she sent long, rambling texts about how I'd blindsided her, how I was overreacting, how I threw away 3 years over a party. But I knew it wasn't just about the party. It was everything. The constant jabs, the slow erosion of my self-worth disguised as banter, the way she always needed to feel one step above me, even if it meant stepping on me to get there. When I didn't respond, the messages turned bitter again. She told mutual friends I had emotional issues, that I wasn't ready for a real relationship, and that I was probably having a midlife crisis. A few of them reached out to check in, and I thanked them politely. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I started therapy for the first time in my life. Turns out, there's a lot you bury when you grow up constantly trying to be enough. My therapist, a soft-spoken guy named Rick, asked me one day why I stayed in the relationship for so long, and I told him the truth, because I thought I was lucky to have anyone at all. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and said, "Let's work on that." So I did. Slowly. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years. I started writing again, not poetry this time, but essays, journals, sometimes just messy thoughts I didn't want to forget. I started running. Not far at first, just around the block, but eventually I could go 5 miles without stopping. It felt good to move without asking permission. A few months later, I got promoted at work, lead designer. I gave a presentation to our CEO and didn't stumble once. My confidence wasn't roaring back all at once. It was creeping in like sunrise, quiet but steady. I didn't hear from Claire again for a while. Then, in early spring, I got an email. Subject line, please read. It was long. She said she realized she'd gone too far, that she was going through things too, and that she didn't mean to hurt me. She said she missed me, that no one had ever understood her the way I did, that she thought we were meant to grow old together. She asked if I could meet her, just for coffee. I read the email 3 times. Then I closed it without replying. A week after that, she showed up at my building. It was raining hard. I'd just gotten back from the gym, hoodie soaked through. When I saw her standing outside the front lobby, no umbrella, no coat, just drenched. She looked like a movie character waiting for a last chance. When she saw me through the glass, she lit up like I was a lifeline. She knocked on the door, frantic, like I might disappear again if she didn't act fast. I stepped outside, quietly. Noah, she said, half laughing, half sobbing. I've been trying to reach you. Please, just talk to me. She grabbed my arm. I made a mistake, okay? I was stupid. I thought I was being funny, but I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. Please, Noah, can we just talk? Before I could say anything, my phone rang. I looked down. It was her mom. I answered, and before I could even speak, she said, Noah, please give her another chance. She's been miserable without you. She knows she messed up. I stared at Claire shivering, mascara running, eyes pleading. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I didn't feel like I owed her my forgiveness. I said, calmly and clearly, she burned that bridge out loud. Then I hung up. And right as Claire started to speak again, I walked past her quietly, gently, back into the building. But that's not where the story ends. I wish I could say Claire just disappeared from my life after that night. That she stood in the rain, watched me walk away, and quietly accepted the consequences of her actions. But that wasn't who Claire was. Letting go meant losing control, and Claire didn't like to lose. The next few days, the messages resumed. Long walls of text that swung between self-pity, deflection, and veiled accusations. One message would say, I understand now. I was awful, and you didn't deserve that, followed by another saying, you could have told me how hurt you were instead of just ghosting. You humiliated me. Then came the guilt traps. I'm in therapy now, too. I'm trying to be better. Don't I deserve a chance? I didn't reply to a single one. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I finally understood something. Some people only apologize to reopen the door, not because they're truly sorry. Claire didn't want to make amends. She wanted her audience back. And I was done being a spectator in my own humiliation. Life, meanwhile, was unfolding in the most unexpected and poetic ways. My promotion at work led to an opportunity to co-lead a major UI redesign for a tech product that went viral in the startup world. Suddenly, I was being asked to speak on panels, give interviews, collaborate with firms I once only dreamed of applying to. For the first time, people were looking at me, not as the background guy, the quiet support beam, but as someone with something to say. I remember getting invited to a local tech conference in early June. It was a big deal. Tickets sold out months in advance. I was scheduled to be on a panel called Designing Emotion, which felt fitting considering the year I'd had. It was set in one of those glossy downtown venues with floor-to-ceiling windows and obnoxiously expensive coffee. I wore a tailored navy blazer I never thought I'd own, and I walked on stage without trembling. That was the day I realized I didn't just survive Claire. I'd rebuilt from scratch. And somehow, of course, word got back to her. A week later, I got a DM from an account I didn't recognize, her best friend, Jenna. We weren't close, but she'd always been civil. The message just said, saw your talk. You're killing it. FYI, Claire's not doing great. I didn't reply, but Jenna must have said something to Claire, because not long after, the next escalation came. A long email titled, I'm proud of you. I read it out of curiosity, and it was exactly what I expected. She talked about how she'd watched the panel online, how inspiring I was, and how seeing me so confident and articulate reminded her of why she fell for me in the first place. She ended it with, I wish we could talk. Just once. I miss your voice. That's when I finally decided to respond, but not to her. I called Rick, my therapist, and said, I don't want this person in my head anymore. What do I do with all this leftover weight? He told me something I'll never forget. Not all closure comes from a conversation. Sometimes, it comes from the life you live without them. And so, I doubled down on that life. Later that summer, I got contacted by a recruiter from a massive creative firm in Chicago. They'd seen my portfolio and were interested in offering me a leadership role. The salary was double what I made. I'd be leading an entire team. The only catch, I had to relocate within 60 days. It wasn't even a decision. I said yes that night. I sold the condo, packed up the few things I cared about, and moved across state lines to a sleek loft with exposed brick and tall ceilings, something I'd always wanted but never thought I could afford. My first night there, I made pasta from scratch while jazz played in the background, and I sat by the window sipping red wine, staring at the skyline. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. A few months later, I posted a photo of that view on my Instagram, just a wide shot of the city lights, with the caption, "Starting over was the best thing I never wanted." It wasn't aimed at anyone. It was just a quiet truth. But Claire saw it, because 3 days after I posted it, I got one last message. Her name popped up on my phone again like a ghost I'd already buried. It simply said, "You really meant it. You're never coming back." I didn't reply, because some messages are meant to echo unanswered. A year after that fateful game night, I was flown to New York to speak at an international conference. While I was backstage preparing, a young designer came up to me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to say, your talk last year is the reason I didn't give up on design. You made me feel like it was okay to be the quiet one." I smiled genuinely. "Thanks," I said. "That means more than you know." But inside, I did know. Because not long ago, I was the guy who let a room full of people laugh at his pain. And now, I was helping others feel seen. And here's the thing about people like Claire, they don't really move on. Not because they're still in love, but because they lose control over the narrative. She didn't want me back. She wanted the version of me who let her shine at my expense. The version who'd smile through the jokes, who'd let the spotlight turn him into a shadow so she could bask in it. Once I walked away from that role, the entire script collapsed for her. And I think that's what haunted her more than anything, that I stopped playing my part. After the final message, "You're never coming back," Claire went quiet for good. No more emails. No more texts. No more pop-ups from mutual friends with, "Have you heard from Claire?" layered into casual conversation. It was like the world decided, collectively, to turn the page with me. And I needed that. Chicago became more than just a new city. It became my proof. Proof that I was more than the version of myself she kept trying to shrink. I found friends who never made jokes at my expense just to fill the silence. I found coworkers who didn't see quiet confidence as a weakness. I found places that felt like home, not places I was trying to survive in. About 6 months after moving, I started teaching a night class at a local design institute. Just once a week, nothing major. But I found I really enjoyed helping other people find their voice. One of my students, a shy but insanely talented guy named Malik, stayed after class one night and said, "I almost dropped out last year. I didn't think someone like me could do this. But the way you explain things, it's like you see people." That hit me harder than I expected. Because for so long, I just wanted to be seen. And now I was helping other people feel that same validation, not through performance, not by changing who they were, but by showing up as themselves and realizing that was enough. Eventually, I started dating again. Cautiously at first. I wasn't looking for fireworks or fairy tales. I just wanted something real. I met Elise at a bookstore cafe where we both reached for the same copy of The Midnight Library. Classic rom-com moment, right? But it wasn't the spark that won me over. It was the comfort. The way she listened without judgment. The way she never made me feel like I had to earn my place beside her. On our third date, I told her the game night story, not the dramatized version, just the quiet, painful truth. She didn't laugh. She didn't offer platitudes. She just reached across the table, touched my hand, and said, "That must have hurt. I'm glad you left." It was the simplest thing, but it told me everything. By the time the anniversary of that night came around, I barely noticed. I only realized it when I got an automatic calendar reminder I hadn't deleted. Game night at home, 7 p.m. I stared at it for a moment, smiled, and hit delete. That was the closure. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just moving on with such certainty that the past couldn't find a way to pull me back. But the universe has a way of wrapping things up in its own poetic language. A year and a half later, I was invited back to my old city for a panel. Nothing huge, just a guest spot at a university's tech entrepreneurship series. After the talk, as I was mingling with some students, a familiar voice called my name. I turned, and there she was. Claire. Hair a little shorter. Eyes tired. Smile practiced. Noah, she said, like the name itself carried weight. Wow, you look different. I nodded politely. Hey. She stood there awkwardly, waiting for me to say more. I didn't. Finally, she said, I saw your name on the program. I almost didn't believe it. You're really doing well, huh? I am, I said simply. Then I added, I hope you're too. And I meant it. Because the truth is, by then, I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. The kind of distance that no apology or glance can cross. The kind that comes when you've rebuilt your life so far beyond someone's reach that they become a chapter, important, sure, but closed. She started to say something else, probably something rehearsed. But I gently excused myself and walked away. Not with bitterness. Not with regret. Just peace. That night, back at the hotel, I opened my notebook. Yes, a new one. Not read this time. Sleek, black leather. Inside were pages of poems, essays, ideas, even doodles. I'd started writing again. Not for validation, not to impress anyone. Just for me. One of the last pages had a scribbled line I didn't even remember writing until I saw it again that night. The best revenge is becoming someone they'll never get to hurt again. And I think that's the story, really. Not how Claire mocked my poetry. Not how she embarrassed me in front of her friends. Not even how she tried to claw her way back in when the consequences finally hit. The real story is that I left, and I never looked back. That I found out who I was when no one was watching. That I stopped letting other people decide my worth. That I turned humiliation into healing. That I burned my own bridge and kept walking until the smoke cleared. And when it did, there was a whole skyline waiting for me on the other side.